Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to the Politics Show. Today's guest is Richard Short, Deputy Director of Conservative Workers and Trade Unionists, and also former parliamentary candidate. Richard, firstly, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Only one issue that we can start with, really. Brexit, of course. It's on everybody's lips. Is the issue of Brexit and the UK's imminent departure from the EU putting fear and uncertainty into workers across the UK?
I speak to many workers. I speak to many people on the doorstep in normal campaigning, and of course in my own everyday work as well. I meet people that I work with, and I don't see a big groundswell of despair and dismay. The only dismay I see is, can the politicians please just get on with it? I think everybody just wants something to happen. Whether you're on the Remain side, whether you're on the Leave side, they just want it to be done. As you get more into the Westminster bubble, of course, these feelings get accentuated. So you do get these reports of despair, doom, despondency, or success and sunlit uplands. But no, I don't detect any sort of genuine fear or anything like that from workers. Certainly not.
And at this crucial stage for the public here, what would you say is the biggest challenge facing Conservative workers and trade unionists?
The challenge we've always faced in the Conservative Party is one that the Conservative Party hasn't always been seen or been portrayed as the party of the worker. Which is very frustrating to us because when you look at the facts and the figures and the way people vote, we very much are the party of the workers. Even in the 1980s, which is the nemesis of the left, is Margaret Thatcher, of course. And there was nobody more for the workers than Margaret Thatcher, who helped people buy their council houses. She enabled people to buy shares in the privatised industries at discounted rates and all that sort of thing. Do you remember the SID campaign back in the 1980s, where the British Gas shares were sold, and they were deliberately priced and targeted so that ordinary workers, including people that worked for those nationalised industries, could actually take part in that. So that's just an example of how workers are represented within the Conservative Party, and then of course, just recently, you'll see that the things like the increase in the minimum wage, the introduction of the national living wage, these things are now being debated and talked about in a way that they never were before. So it's our frustration really that we hear from other parts of the political spectrum that no, we're not for the worker, and we know we are, and the voters know we are because they vote for Conservatives in their droves.
And going from Margaret Thatcher to another resilient leader under fire, Theresa May, how do you believe that she has fared throughout these Brexit negotiations? She's getting criticism from all sides.
Indeed. The problem for Theresa May, and first of all, I'd just like to start, you have to admire her stoicism. She's stuck it out. She's still there when many people have written her off from even from when she took office in 2016. The commentators were saying, "Oh, she's got an impossible task ahead of her." She made that wonderful speech on the steps of Downing Street just as she was taking office, and I think she knew the daunting task that was ahead of her. Of course, it's not even an elephant in the room, is it? Because we're all talking about is Brexit. That's the main issue on her agenda. And I think the way that she has dealt with that, what makes it as an impossible task is that this is one area where she has to please all of the people all of the time, and everybody knows that's impossible. She's bound to be upsetting some people at some of the time. And we talked about the Westminster bubble before. It's when you have these very loud voices on the Remain and the Leave side attacking her from both sides. I think she's coping very, very well indeed. And the very fact that she is still there and she is still prepared to go to Brussels, despite what the people in Brussels have said. You've had Tusk talking about his special place in hell. You've got Juncker absolutely refusing to reopen the negotiations. Yet she is still there. She is still there trying to try and get these renegotiations done, to get the best deal for Britain.
And no doubt Conservatives behind the scenes do have leadership ambitions. How damaging do you believe that has been to the party as a whole?
Well, you name me any era in the history of the Conservative Party where there hasn't been politicians with leadership ambitions, and you'll see the path to the situation we have now is littered with MPs that have been name checked as the next Prime Minister, and very few of them have actually been the Prime Minister. So I think she's taken that all in her stride. You know, there are names that have been mentioned. There are people that are all but name checking themselves and putting themselves forward for leadership. But at the moment, we have a leader. It's I nearly said Margaret Thatcher. We have a leader. It's Theresa May, and she needs to be allowed to get on with the job. And getting on the job is what she's doing.
And not only is a challenge to unite the party, but also obviously the UK. Do you truly believe that the UK can unite from this huge division that Brexit has caused?
Well, I question the premises of the question, because the question that you put was Brexit has caused this divide. What I would see is the divide has always been there. And you only have to look into recent history, back in 1993, where the Maastricht Treaty was being negotiated. There was a divide there that was so intense it actually formed a new party, which is UKIP. So the divisions have always been there. What Brexit has done has made things very transparent. You know, we can now label these divisions. You know, so we have Brexit, we have Remain. But yes, we will heal these wounds. We will come to terms with the fact that we do have differences of opinion. But that's the nature of democracy. You know, today we're talking about Brexit and Remain. Tomorrow we'll probably be back to talking Conservative and Labour, left and right. The divisions have always been there. We're a very resilient country, you know, and we can cope.
Is there any doubts in your mind that the UK won't leave on March the 29th? Or do you think that's an absolute certainty?
I'll be. Politicians are often said they never answer the question. I'll give you a direct answer. We will leave on the 29th of March.
And obviously, as a former parliamentary candidate yourself, would you like to still be an MP? Do you have those ambitions?
Indeed. I'm not a career politician. My day job isn't in politics, and I think that's right. I think that MPs, councillors, elected members in whatever field they need to come from sections of society which have got nothing to do with politics, because the overwhelming majority of people in this country aren't politicians. They're not mad enough to go into that world. They've got a life to lead, as I have in other areas. And I think being a member of Parliament, to me it's a vocation. To me it's a feeling of something I want to do. So indeed, yes, I do have parliamentary ambitions, and I'm a big believer in fate as well. So we'll let fate take its course. But at the moment, I'm very happy with what I'm doing.
Do you believe an early election will be called then? If so, do you believe that's what the public really want to see, an early general election?
Well, you probably talk to the wrong person. You need to be talking to Brenda from Bristol on that one, don't you? But no, I think, again, certainly the people that I talk to when I'm talking to people on the streets, in the pubs and clubs and the hotels and wherever that I go to, there is absolutely no appetite for a fresh election. What people really just want to do is go back to Brexit again. What people really want to do is just let's get on with it. Whatever's going to happen, let it happen. We just need this thing to be concluded. And on the 29th of March, it will be.
And from speaking to people on the streets, do you get the sense that people have lost faith in politicians, or would you say that would be unfair to say?
No, actually, I think the public at large are actually more politically engaged than they've ever been. There is a tendency to think that everything that's going on is really switching people off politics. But what I've noticed is that people are very much attaching themselves to a political ideal, which is something we haven't really seen since the 1980s. And politics is exciting again. Yeah. And we do see these differences, not just with the Leave and the Remain, but we have now Jeremy Corbyn with his hard left, some say Marxist. I happen to agree with that agenda. And then you have on the right of the party, you've got right of the political spectrum. You've got UKIP, which has got ever harder right, and it is really becoming the next nationalist party. And I'm not saying that in a good way. What we need now is a centre-right party, which history will show you have always been the most successful governments in the UK. Has been when a centre-right party has had the reins of power. But I think now is a time for people to get very excited in politics, and they are getting very excited in politics.
Obviously, great to see the population as a whole engaged in the political process. But how do we actually get the younger generation, fully engaged in the political process, not just when Brexit's concerned, but in decades to come as well?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, there is a tendency to think that the youth are switching off politics, just as there was a tendency to think that it was the youth that voted Remain and didn't really want Brexit. But again, when you actually talk to the people that do vote, that is definitely not the case. When we talk about young members of society, young politicians, they're as vibrant as ever. The opportunities for youth to engage in politics, and including politics with a small p. We're not just talking about party politics either. We have social media where ideas can be aired and tested, and people can view their points of view. To me, that's politics. That's political engagement. So it's as lively as it ever has been.
Another issue as well, the diversity that we have in Parliament. More Black, Asian and minority ethnic MPs now than ever before. Yeah. How do you believe that we can actually engage more people from not just BAE and ME communities, but also LGBT communities, for example, as well? And do you think that's sort of essential to having a successful Parliament, having a more diverse Parliament?
Absolutely. Parliament in any country, not just the UK, but Parliament has to reflect the country that it represents. So having a diverse Parliament is a key component of that. Going back to my own Conservative ideals, it's not right that we should pick and choose who is in Parliament, but it is definitely right that we should allow everybody the opportunity to take part in the political process. Now, there are various initiatives within my own party that have assisted that, and the stereotype is Conservative Party is very staid in its ways and very traditional. But when you actually get involved with the Conservative Party and you actually look with your eyes wide open what's going on in the Conservative Party, it's as diverse as any political party and political movement that you have out there. And for us, it's a more sustainable diversity, because what we haven't done is alienated any section of the community. What we've actually done is opened our doors and say we are open to everybody, and everybody's come. Yeah, we have a very diverse in all manners, whether it's race, gender, religion. We welcome everybody.
And moving on to another topic, the issue of homelessness. And so obviously you're a homeless charity support trustee, aren't you?
Indeed.
Are you alarmed by the levels of homelessness that we are actually seeing across the UK now?
Well, you're quite right. I'm the chairman of the Homeless Support Project in Lee, which is where I live in the northwest of England. And to be perfectly honest, I'm very upset whenever I see anybody that is homeless. We're dealing with people there that are in desperate need for help, and it's the Homeless Support charity that I chair. Is that place where people can go for support and a cry for help. So yes, it does upset me to see homeless people out on the street. It's why I got involved in the homeless charity, of course. Yeah.
Do you believe that any government policies, such as the implementation of universal credit, are to blame for the levels of homelessness that we are seeing across the UK at the minute?
The homeless people that I see within my own charity and the stories and reports that I read, it's impossible to actually give the definitive reason why somebody has been made homeless. And we must also bear in mind that there are various definitions of homeless, because when you talk about homeless, we're not always talking about rough sleeping. We're talking about sofa surfing, we're talking about temporary housing that's not their home, technically homeless. So there's a multiple of reasons why somebody would actually be made homeless. What is important is that if somebody has been made homeless, whether it's rough sleeping or sofa surfing or whatever homelessness situation they happen to find themselves in, what's important is that they have the support to get them back on their feet. And this is all to do, again, with another Conservative value is the ladder of opportunity. We want the ladder there for somebody to help themselves out of homelessness. And that's where we differ from other parties. You know, we're not the party of handouts. We're not the party of gifting people things that they need. What we want is to give people the opportunity to get themselves out of the position that they're in. And we've had a remarkable success with doing that.
And I mentioned obviously the universal credit system. It has come in for a lot of criticism. Do you believe that system is here to stay?
Yes, and here today it should stay. The principles behind universal credit are sound. When you're criticising universal credit, I think you need to cast your mind back only just a few years with the predecessor to that, which is a host of benefits from a variety of different agencies, including tax credits. And the universal credit has been rolled out quite slowly and quite deliberately so. And at every rollout, we learn lessons and we correct those lessons to make it better, make it more efficient. The rollout has actually been slowed down again, which we've been criticised for, but I'm happy to accept that criticism. Because if you roll it out slowly, you can learn your lessons and implement changes, because at the end of the day, this has got to benefit the people who receive the benefit. Cast your mind back about 5 years ago when tax credits, sorry, longer than 5 years ago now, when tax credits were hastily introduced in 1 year by Gordon Brown's government, and the debacle that ended up with that were people being overpaid and then being asked to repay their entire overpayments overnight, and it was terrifying for people in that position. I've been in that position myself, you know, where you're just living day to day, and you don't know where the next amount is coming from, and then suddenly you have the taxman say, "We want all our money back." That's not what government should be doing to people. So with the universal credit, we avoid the cliff edge. We avoid what was there before, where the 16 hours work, which to many people is part-time work. The moment you hit that under the old system, you lost all of your benefits. With universal credit, you've got a taper system so that you can gradually come off benefits and still work as well, but making work pay, making work beneficial to go into. Now, yes, there are things we can do about the taper. There are things we can do about the waiting time and the time it takes to actually get there, get the benefits. And I'm very happy to say that's something that the Conservative Workers and Trade Unionists have been very vocal about. And we wrote, as a group, an open letter with over 100 signatures to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to get him to change the universal credit rules so that people get it quicker, so the decisions are made more quickly. And I'm very happy to say he listened to what we said and has implemented those changes. So yes, it could be better, and it is getting better.
Moving on to another topic, the NHS. As an NHS governor, you know the budget pressures that are facing NHS trusts across the UK.
Yeah.
Do you believe the NHS, as it currently is here to stay, or do you believe we are looking at it being fully privatised in years to come?
Whenever I'm asked that question, I always go back to when the NHS first started, back in the 1940s. And the NHS that we had then is nothing like the NHS we have now. So to answer your question more directly, no, I think the NHS 40 years hence will be different from the NHS that we've got now. It will have to adapt to the advances in medicine, to the things that we can treat now that we couldn't treat before. There are untreatable diseases now that in future we maybe have a solution for. So that the NHS will have to change to deal with those. Back in the 1940s, if anybody got cancer, cancer's always bad news, but it was devastating news in the 1940s. There were no solutions. It was palliative care or nothing. Now we've got cures for cancer. We can actually deal with cancer. More people survive cancer than die from it now. In more recent history, you know, we've had HIV has been an emerging disease in the 1980s. And when somebody had HIV, almost certainly they were going to get AIDS and almost certainly they were going to die. That was the sad truth. Now, not the case. And that's because of advances in medicine that we could do now that we couldn't do before.
Yeah. And just another topic, local councils obviously facing budget cuts from central government, but at the same time, there's no doubt that councils can obviously operate more efficiently and save funds. Is austerity over? Yes.
The reason why I'm saying that is because we inherited a huge deficit when we got the reins of government in 2010 as a coalition partnership with the Liberal Democrats. the deficit was over £150 billion. Now that's not the same as debt, and I just want to make this clear because it's often confused, debt and deficit. The £150 billion was what we were spending in excess of the money that was coming into government. And you can't reduce that overnight. No, we had to reduce that over a period of time. We wanted to do it in 5 years, but of course we were in coalition. We weren't on our own, so we didn't have the entire decision-making process to ourselves. So we've had to take a little bit longer. But the deficit has now been cleared. There are some months we're in surplus and not in deficit. So we've dealt with the deficit. Now we can look at making sure that if the economy has a downturn again, which the economic cycles always dictate there'll be a downturn. We don't believe in Gordon Brown's no more boom and bust, and many people seem to have forgotten that he said that. But what we want to do is make sure that the economy is in a fit state to be able to deal with economic shocks. You know, like a few years ago we had the Euro crisis. We don't know what's going to come in future. Of course, we've got Brexit that may need some economic stimulus to help that through. So no, the austerity is over, and I like to say that quite clearly. But that doesn't mean to say that it's a free-for-all and we can go profligate with our spending, because that's what got us into this trouble in the first place. But let me pick you up on the council funding. I live in the Wigan borough, and this is just an example because many other councils are doing exactly what they're doing. Last year, they actually kept reserves, usable reserves, of £148 million within the council accounts. And for all that is said about cuts to services and denying things to council taxpayers, which has all been happening in Wigan and other local authorities as well, what they've managed to do is increase those reserves in the last year by £35 million. Now, the homeless charity that I chair, you know, we would desperately want some of that £35 million, but they're not. They're keeping it to themselves. So I think councils can do their bit as well. They get the settlement grant from the local government. It's never enough. No matter what you give to the councils, it's never enough to cover their expenses. But I think it's time for councils to do their bit as well and say, okay, we're not getting everything that we want from the government, but you know, we've got £177 million there in usable reserves. Maybe it's time we need to change our priorities and spend some money on the people that have given them that cash, which is the council taxpayers.
We're also seeing councils operate somewhat like businesses nowadays as well, buying these, investing in these risky property deals to generate funds. Are you a fan of councils taking that approach with key taxpayers' money?
My everyday job is risk. I'm involved in corporate risk with a business, and risk is not about taking risky decisions. Risk is about knowing what risks to take. Now, good councils, and I spoke to many good councils. In fact, just recently I was speaking to the leader of a district council in Lincolnshire, and he was telling me that yes, they have reserves, just like my own council has, but they've been reducing reserves in a very methodical and sustainable way by investing in businesses, in property, in assets, so that they can then raise money against those assets and get a revenue with those assets. But I think, just going back to my own example, an example with Wigan Council about 25 years ago is where they decided to invest £2.1 million in the Bank of Credit and Commerce International, which went bust overnight and took over £2 million of Wigan taxpayers' money with it. So actually, no, there are some councils I wouldn't trust with taking risks. My own council is one of them. But each council needs to make its own decisions, and if they're making good decisions and it benefits the taxpayer, then yes, I'm all for it.
Thanks, Richard. That's all for today, and thank you all for watching. Make sure to tune in next time for The Politics Show. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.